Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for today's Appraisal Buzzcast. We appreciate all the great feedback and the new subscribers we've been getting, both on the audio version and on this video version. If you aren't already subscribed, take a second to click the subscribe button below and make sure you get notified of the latest Buzzcast every week. Today, we'll be speaking with Joan Trice, CEO of Allterra Group, and Robert Carroll, the chair of Single Family Housing Finance Committee with NAHB. Robert is also the owner of Carroll Construction in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. We'll be discussing the challenges with appraising new construction. I'll hand it over to you, Joan.
Thank you, Jim, and welcome, Robert. How are you today?
Doing great. Nice balmy day in Louisiana today.
Oh, good. I love balmy. So tell us what's going on in the new construction space. Things are going wild.
It's one of the craziest markets we've seen. You know, there's good news, of course. Demand is through the roof. Of course, you know, everything's balanced out on the opposite side. Of course, that's the word on the street. The costs of everything are going up, and we're seeing it in housing prices as well as in material costs, and even a little bit in labor these days.
Really? So land, labor, and materials are all increasing. What kind of percentages difference are we talking about here? I mean, these are significant, correct?
Well, the easiest thing to talk about, you know, we typically see the 3% rise in the regular material costs, but kind of the problem child right now is, of course, the lumber cost. We've seen in the past 10 months, we've seen 180% increase in framing lumber. And that's your dimensional, anything from your 2x material to your OSB. Just to give you a quick example, and I mentioned this last time we spoke, in June of 2020, a 2x4x16 was somewhere in the neighborhoods of $6.80 per board. As a matter of fact, I checked on the prices whenever we had to purchase some yesterday. They were around $15.65. Now, to put this in context, we ordered these in bundles of anywhere from 240 to 324 whenever you're building a home. So it's quite a shock whenever you get nearly a $4,000 invoice on bracing and rafter material.
Wow, that is significant. So how do you deal with that in new construction? So you sign a contract with your consumer and then prices escalate after that contract is signed. How do you deal with that? Does that just come out of your pocket?
So no, we wouldn't be able to stay in business if we were attempting to absorb these rates. Many builders at this moment are moving to what was seen previously back in the 80s, the escalation clause, where we are allowed to recoup any changes in the pricing along the way. And this is especially true in the custom market. For example, the steps that we take with our clients is we have a rather long build process because we try to get as close to a fixed price before we sign the contract as possible in the custom market. And we eliminate even allowances. Well, in our case, we'll actually get a price at the beginning, make all of our selections, and just before the contract, typically about a week, we will adjust, and then we'll sign the contract. And that is what the appraiser sees on the front end. And then the challenge is coming in is that these prices are changing from week to week, especially with the rate of escalation. So we will actually get a slab on the ground and then reach back out to the client and offer them to wait on the prices to come down or to move forward. Obviously, it's a guess either way. If they're going to go up or go down, you're kind of taking a gamble. So far, most of our clients have opted to move ahead because it doesn't look like anything's going down anytime soon.
Right. No, I would concur on that.
The challenges for the client who they've got to come out. I mean, obviously, whenever the appraisal is set in place at the beginning of the construction loan, before they make it to the actual market of the 30-year conventional mortgage, they're going to have to come out of pocket with cash a lot of times in order to make this up. And so this is really placing a hamper on clients that may not be able to do that in our particular space. And it's not just affecting custom. Obviously, maybe in the speculative market, what you're seeing is kind of a mix. Builders that I've spoken with some of them have actually subsidized a bit of that by a reduction in their margin of the price of the home, but it's changing week by week by week with many of these builders, and so there's only so much that they can actually come out with. So when you've got a finished product, it's a little bit easier for the appraisers to see that and factor that in. When you get into the custom work, it gets a little bit trickier because, as I mentioned, there's just too many moving parts. And whenever a home can take as long as 6 months to build, that's a lot of time for lumber to get crazy and go up and down. And it happens even as down to the trim products, which are happening at the end of the job.
Well, it sounds to me like the lesson learned here is that the appraiser needs to have really good communication with the builder. And because if they're pulling out a cost manual and that's not caught up with what's actually going on in the real world, they're really going to miss the boat, so to speak. We're going to come back to that in a minute. And right now I'm going to break and go to Jim for a commercial message, and then we'll come back and talk about indexes and sources for appraisers to look at.
Appraisers, if you've grown frustrated with endlessly pursuing new appraisal work and not reaping any of the benefits, Metro West is here to help. They understand and work to alleviate the pain points commonly felt by appraisers to enable personal and financial growth for their staff. After all, they've been owned and operated by appraisers since the company opened in 1987. Metro West Appraisal is an equal opportunity employer, and they're always looking for certified residential real estate appraisers to join their team. Visit metrowestappr.com/careers or email careers@metrowestappr.com. Back to you, Joan.
Thank you, Jim. So, Robert, what's your experience with residential cost handbooks? And is there one service better than another? Does NAHB have resources on its website that might be helpful to appraisers?
So we actually do have posted on NAHB.org on the blog anytime if you just search NAHB.org lumber prices, you're going to find a lot of articles that we've been trying to get the information out. One helpful little chart that's on there is the lumber futures index. So it gives you the composite price of the lumber as well as the futures index, and it's a great tool. I actually went and looked at this to see whenever last fall the actual peak took place in the futures, and we saw that it happened about 3 months, of course, until it trickled down into the actual building market. So we saw the spike. I believe it was around August, and it was around November that we saw that actual peak hop up to the top part. Now, that's not a hard, fast rule. When you're looking at that, keep in mind that the prices fall a lot slower than they go up. And we started to see a little dip in January and got excited. Well, of course, then demand spiked right back, and guess what the futures did?
It was a blip on the radar, right? Exactly. I
wanted to kind of, if I can for a moment, talk about some of what we're seeing about why this is taking place.
Yes.
Because we've been, in our company, we're constantly monitoring. We're looking at every Friday, we reach out and see prices of adjust, and that's typically where we see it from our suppliers. And so in talking about this, we're seeing several different things. Number one, there's just absolute unprecedented demand. Now, where's this demand coming from? Millennials is part of the story, but there was all this pent-up demand that took place. You remember about a decade ago, there were a lot of stories about millennials being priced out of the market, and with the economy, they weren't finding the jobs that they needed. Well, now they're getting those jobs. They're starting to advance in life and looking for that home. Some people had even gone so far as to say that homes were going to be smaller, that the millennials were in fact not going to purchase the home. They were going to rent, and that the American dream of home ownership was dead. Well, we've seen right now that is not the case. In fact, the trend that we had been seeing for homes getting smaller has reversed. We're seeing larger homes as people are starting to work from home. They're
Right.
looking for the home offices. They're rethinking how they use their space. They're having to be more flexible with some of the distance work that they're doing. And where do they place? Some of them still have young children at home. Where do you place the kids whenever you're trying to do a podcast like this or a Zoom meeting, and there's toys flying across in the background? It's a different world that we live in. And so that increased demand has been coupled with an inability, because I don't know anybody in the market right now an inability to meet the demand. I don't know anybody in the market right now that if they could find a way to scale up and address this, that they wouldn't. But we're seeing the material price. Then the labor issue. NAHB is doing a large push right now. We're actually partnershiping with the Micro Works Foundation and trying to get the trades back into school training. It's been almost 2 decades in many cases since trades training was in a high school curriculum. And there's a lot of things that people say to blame for that, but I'll date myself a little bit here. I am in that generation that grew up with hearing, get a degree no matter what, and almost you don't want to do what we're doing for a living. You want to get a degree and move into that space. Well, the problem is if you talk to any electrician or heat and air contractor or plumber or framer, you name it in the trades across the nation, you're going to hear the same refrain over and over again. We cannot find qualified help to do the jobs that we need. I spoke to my framer this week, and it was funny. He says, I've had this one guy working for me for 4 months. Of those 4 months, he's worked about 4 weeks of that. This is the challenge, and it's a really stark contrast to what you're seeing in the headlines, where there are people are looking for jobs. They're out there.
6 million people need a job, but they don't have the skill set to walk on a construction site and sling a hammer. That's unfortunate. We're experiencing the same problem in the appraisal space. So it sounds like it's almost across the board where we have a large unemployment number, but demand to hire people in all kinds of sectors, but they're just not appropriately trained. So that's a story for another day, I think. Let's break one more time back over to Jim. And then we're going to come back and we're going to talk about what's new in new construction in terms of trends and new materials and new features, because that's the fun stuff I like to talk about.
Stop waiting 30 days to get paid on your appraisal invoices. Cicady Capital is a simple and secure payment platform that improves your cash flow and reduces the time you have to spend on paperwork and making collection calls. The process is simple. After the initial account's set up, simply submit your invoices to Cicady Capital instead of your AMC or lender. You'll receive payment the next business day while Cicady Capital collects the payment from your AMC or lender, leaving you with more time to do what you want to do. For additional questions or to set up an account to get paid faster, call Cicady Capital support team at 208-953-7234, 208-953-7234, or email them at support@cicady.com, SEKADY.com. Joan, back to you.
Thank you, Jim. So, Robert, the obvious, which you've already alluded to earlier, is that not only do people want offices, many households now need 2 offices at home, which I think accounts for a lot of the demand in housing. A lot of people now need a bigger house and they need to move up in order to accommodate working from home. But what other trends? Are there any kind of new cool materials, or what's the hot color? What's going on?
Well, we're seeing brushed brass come back.
Really? I know that one's kind of shocking, isn't it?
I think you got the 80s trickling into the early 90s. We're not quite seeing the bold colors come back. We're still muted tones. Among my clients with our company, we're actually seeing a reverse back to the warm tones again. Mm-hmm. That's not reflected, of course, in the photo behind me here, but our biggest reaction are warm, natural woods coming in, a little bit of a darker home. I think as people are spending more time in their home, they're recognizing those light walls maybe don't work so well with little fingers touching them, and right. A lot of that needs to be done. The farmhouse trends in the Louisiana market, of course, are still they're still hot. We're seeing more and more of those come onto the market, and it's really gone into full scale. We're seeing even the semi-custom builders bring those up. Our market's still not catching on to metal roofing, but there's a lot of desire for it. I believe, Joan, you're in the Florida area.
Yeah.
People move over here from Florida and they're just amazed, and so it's more of a cost factor, but there's a definite desire to get it into the job if they can find it. I anticipate that we're going to start seeing a swing back to some stained cabinets. Paint was kind of king for the past 8 or 9 years as people were looking for low cost alternatives. Well, now, lo and behold, locally sourced materials are making a comeback, and we're seeing a lot of that. And then, of course, we're still seeing a high demand for the flood-proof materials. Of course, Louisiana experienced an extreme event in 2016, and it kind of changed the culture of how people thought about it. So a lot of tile wood planks going in, and things that they hope to never have to replace, even if they should have an emergency.
Right, right. Well, that's most interesting. Now, I've been witnessing the same thing because I just bought a house that needs a renovation, and I've been looking at lots of materials and trends, and some of it's kind of surprising. But yeah, gray seems to be on its way out, and brown seems to be the new neutral again. So that's fascinating to watch that. Well, Robert, I can't thank you enough for joining us today, and hope to see you. Maybe, is NAHB having a national conference this year?
We are, it's always hit and miss, seeing what happens with the national situation with the virus and the vaccination counts and what's happening there. But fingers crossed, we'll be in DC in June, and we can get back to that. And I'll offer one more prediction that's gonna, if you're looking for your stock pick, anybody with glare-free glasses in their lineup, you can the video.
I think that's going to be a new trend. Yeah, exactly. Good point, Robert. Good tip.
But thank you for having us, and it's always good, of course, Joan, to catch up. And of course, I remember we met years ago at NAHB, and I always appreciate your continued involvement and help out. It's always good to have your voice speaking up and kind of giving us an insight as to what's going on the appraisal front, because for too many years there was this divide between builders and appraisers.
Oh, that's ridiculous. Yeah, that doesn't need to be. Yeah.
It doesn't need to be, because in the end, we're all on the same team trying to get the most accurate valuations for these homes.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again, Robert, and have a great day.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Jim.
Well, thank you all for joining us. That was really an insightful look into new building. And I know that appraisers are going to need to learn a lot from that, especially the cost of lumber. That's eye-opening. Well, thank you all for joining us, and have a great day. ProxyPix is the first of its kind on-demand system for getting the location-specific media you need from wherever you are. Their simple-to-use platform creates an online marketplace matching people needing property photos with proxies or data collectors near the requested location. Through crowdsourcing, you can get current up-to-date photos of anything on the map within hours, if not minutes. Never before has there been a quicker, simpler, or more economic way to get property photos you need. Sign up on proxypix.com or download our app, available on the Apple and Google Play Store.